Welcome into a special Hoopsville edition. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. We are obviously in the middle of baseball and lacrosse postseasons, but that doesn't mean basketball is still not making headlines, and that is certainly the case in Division III, where the news has been, as you probably are already aware, that the Division III championship game in men's basketball will be moving to Atlanta, Georgia for the 2013 season, along with the Division II championship game to coincide with the Division I Final Four in a celebration of the 75th anniversary of the championship games in men's basketball. This is something that has been in the works for a little bit of time and something that has certainly been talked about and rumored and there's been scuttlebutt about for a long time. And it is something that we have hoped to get you as many answers as possible. And this mini podcast, we hope, will do that for you. Now, joining me on the Hoopsville Hotline, Vice President for Division III in the NCAA, Dan Dutcher. Sir, welcome back to Hoopsville, as it were. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Dave, thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to be back in Hoopsville.
Obviously, the big news that we've brought you on for is something that you and I actually had discussed, but obviously was not official, and that is taking next year's championship game in men's basketball to Atlanta, Georgia, the home of the Division I Final Four, this along with a Division II men's championship game. I know this was something that had been in the works for a long time. I know there had been plenty of discussions about this. What was the ultimate decision, and why why was this what was important for the 75th anniversary?
Well, Dave, the announcement, I think, is very exciting. The idea will be to conduct the Division II and the Division III men's basketball championships in conjunction with the Division I championships in Atlanta next year. The Division I semifinals would take place on Saturday, as they traditionally do, but on Sunday, which in the past has been an off day for competition, we would have the Division III men's championship, followed by the Division II men's championship, and then the D1 finals would take place on Monday. All of this is being done to recognize the 75th anniversary of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. I think folks need to remember that the divisions themselves have only been in place since the early 70s. Before that, there was a distinction between the college and university divisions that was created back in the early 50s. But before that, all of the NCAA's member institutions competed together toward the basketball championship, which was initiated under NCAA tutelage in 1939. So the basketball, Division I men's basketball committee and men's basketball staff reached out to Division II and to Division III to ask, make available the opportunity to participate in this tournament in conjunction with celebrating the 75th anniversary.
Obviously, the decision was made recently. It was something I know that was wanting to be made sooner, timeline-wise. What were the delays? I mean, I've even heard from some that wish that this decision had been made a year or more beforehand so schedules could have been adjusted.
Well, discussions initiated last fall. As you know, the NCAA is a large bureaucracy, lots of committees. When you multiply that by multiple divisions being involved, it just meant that there were lots of folks who needed an opportunity and deserved an opportunity to review this concept. I know from a Division III perspective, discussions started with our men's basketball committee, moved forward to our championships committee. There's a financial ramification here, so our strategic planning and finance committee were involved. Ultimately, our management council and president's council also had an opportunity to review and sign off on this. It's a significant initiative from our perspective, not only because of the basketball piece, but also because of the opportunity it presents to the division to put a little bit more of a spotlight on the Division III student-athlete experience. For that reason, we wanted to be sure that if we did this, we wanted to be sure it was done in a way that helped to enhance the Division III experience, that Division III's participation in this event event wouldn't really be a sideshow, wouldn't be overshadowed by what is a very large and very popular event, and that's the Division I Final Four.
That leads me to a number of different questions, but let's start with what you just said there at the end. Division II and Division III will play on Sunday, as you mentioned. They'll play in the home of the Atlanta Hawks, Phillips Arena, not at the Georgia Dome where the Division I games are being played. What was the idea behind having them at two different arenas? Though, if anyone knows Atlanta, that's pretty much next door to each other, but what was the idea of having them at two different arenas?
Well, I think there were really two concepts in mind there. Number one was just a straight-up logistics issue. The challenges with turning over the Division I arena to make it appropriate for a Division II and III game on Sunday, and then turning it back over for Division I on Monday with the related practice demands that are on that facility was a challenge. Number two, we wanted to be sure that the arena where the events take place is the most appropriate arena for Divisions 2 and 3. I think the Georgia Dome probably seats, give or take, somewhere around 60,000 fans. We were afraid that Division 2 and Division 3 contests in that arena would be lost. The fan environment would be more exciting. The player competitive environment would be more positive in an arena with a little bit of a smaller scope. And so when we look at an arena like Phillips, I think the capacity somewhere around 18,000, but it's even possible to reduce that capacity further if you curtain off the upper levels to somewhere around 10,000. So it gives us many more options, gives us more flexibility. Ultimately, it'll be a better environment for our student-athletes and for our fans.
And the other thing, too, is anybody who buys the package for the weekend, am I not mistaken, anybody who gets the tickets for D1 can also come to the D2 and 3 games.
That's our intent. Now, that's an example of a detail that hasn't been completely worked out, but our intent is that opportunities to attend those contests on Sunday, the D2 and 3 championships, would be part of the overall package that all fans would be have made available to them. That's right.
The other thing that's interesting is the game is on a Sunday. Obviously, for schools like a Hope, a Wheaton, a Calvin, other schools who may be able to compete, who have religious backgrounds with their school, they may be unable to play on a Sunday. I know you and I had discussed this, but what details have been put in place that will help in case one of those schools ends up in the championship game and essentially can't play on Sunday?
It's a great question, and the reality is we not only have schools with very successful athletic programs that potentially could end up in the finals in Division III, we also have similar schools in Division II. So we clearly would honor that institutional commitment to not play on Sunday. The alternative would be to conduct those contests on Monday afternoon, still in Phillips Arena.
Now, obviously, the other thing that comes up in many conversations is we are in Atlanta. We're at the home of the Division I Final Four. What's going to preclude the D2 and especially the D3, obviously, as we cover D3, game from being overshadowed, swallowed up, not ignored, but certainly not really focused on when you've got the entire big Final Four from Division I there? What efforts are the NCAA going to make to try and make sure that the games still stand out and it's still a wonderful experience for the student athletes?
It's a really important question, and to be honest with you, I think that has been one of the concerns that we've heard most frequently as this issue has worked its way through our committee structure. There's a real desire to be sure that our Division III student athletes, our Division III fans really do have a quality experience. We aren't really starting from scratch on this conceptually. We can look, for example, to the joint championships that are conducted in men's lacrosse. We know, for example, that a similar joint championship is going to be conducted in men's ice hockey this coming year. We can look at the lacrosse experience, so, for example, as a guide to what kind of opportunities are made available to our student athletes and to our fans, what kind of signage, what kind of banners, what kind of promotional opportunities can we take advantage of to be sure that experience that our student athletes and fans have is a quality experience that stands on its own. So from scheduling to signage, banners, messaging, all of those kinds of things will be done to try to achieve that goal. A few examples: our Division II and Division III student athletes, for example, will be participating along with the Division I finalists in the student athlete salute dinner that takes place on Thursday evening. They'll have separate publicized practice opportunities that will be open to the public, just like the Division I teams do. There'll be appropriate signage in the arena, appropriate signage outside of the arena in the area that includes the Georgia Dome as well as Phillips Arena. Those kinds of opportunities we are committed to as a staff to be sure that these events stand on their own as legitimate experiences.
You take the lacrosse example, and obviously we're in the middle of that. Lacrosse a little bit more of a brotherhood. And I was just at a game, a Division III game, where a Division I coach was actually the NCAA rep, because that's just the way they're able to do things. A little bit more separation in basketball. My bigger concern would be the fans. Getting a hotel in Atlanta for the Final Four may be just a little bit tough to do financially and time-wise. Is there any concern that the fans are going to, get lost in the shuffle a little bit?
There definitely are steps that will be taken to be sure that the participating institutions, their fan bases, will have lodging opportunities that are realistic from a budget standpoint, realistic from a geographic location. We're definitely committed to making those opportunities available.
And the other question I would have is, the schedule certainly is very now different. You have a number of different factors here that have come into play, unfortunately, in all the same year. One, Division I moved its Final Four week back a week, essentially moving it forward in the year to the first full weekend of April, which meant if the schedule had held true, like it normally does, Division III's championship weekend would end up actually falling on the conference championship weekends of Division I, when that normally has been their opening weekend. So you have an extra gap in here that we normally wouldn't have, and obviously that means the schedule from the time that the regular season ends for Division III, then I'm talking conference championships, all the way through to the Final Four is now extremely long. I realize there may not be an answer yet, but what kind of efforts are being made to try and make this at least not drag it out too much, or at least try and keep it even for everybody?
Yeah, that's a really important point. Inevitably, because the championship in Division III will be taking place a couple weeks later than it normally would, there's going to need to be some accommodation. We're really relying on the men's basketball committee to give us a recommendation on how to best accommodate and deal with that gap. To the extent to which the regular playoff schedule is followed, that tends to minimize the effect on the greatest number of teams, but obviously it's going to maximize the delay as you move further through the tournament, especially for the finalists. At the same time, there might be a way to balance that off a little bit, and so though and maybe move some of the delay, a minimal amount of the delay, to the front end of the tournament. And those are the kinds of issues that we're going to ask the basketball committee to review and to make a recommendation for us.
And then the other thing, too, everyone's going to have a conversation about is certainly, with Title IX, there's always the talk of being fair for both men and women. On this occasion, obviously the women's Final Four is not changing. The Division III Final Four is not adjusting. The Division III schedule is not adjusting, is what I should say. But is there any thoughts, plans, ideas for down the road to do something comparable like this in Division I for the Division III women as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a firm commitment in principle that at some point that makes sense in the near future, we would conduct a similar kind of joint championship opportunity on the women's side. We haven't committed to a particular date yet because I think we need to review our options and try to identify what the best timetable would be for that. But all three divisions have committed to conducting a similar kind of opportunity for women from an equity standpoint, absolutely.
Back to the Salem Civic Center, which has hosted the Final Four, the championship weekend, I should say, for Division III the last 17 years. They obviously have a hiatus coming. I know you guys have been in talks with the Civic Center and the city of Salem. What has been discussed that it can be disclosed publicly, and what is the future for the championship weekend in Salem?
Well, Salem has been such a great partner with us all along, and this discussion is yet another example of their commitment to Division III and their willingness to accommodate us in any way they possibly can. The option that seems to be gaining the most support at this point is to conduct a weekend in Salem that would bring in 8 teams and play down to the 2 finalists who would then move on to Atlanta. We think that format would retain the high profile, the priority student athlete experience that Salem has been able to deliver on a consistent basis all along. We want folks to be able to appreciate the quality experience that Salem provides, and it seems that approach would be one that might work well in the overall framework of moving the finals to Atlanta. So that I think that concept has received uniform support all along the way. The timetable sort of remains a little bit in flux, but that, I think, concept probably is the one that's favored at this point.
Another thing I should point out is the championship game will be broadcast on CBS Sports Network, where it had been a few years ago before going to internet only through Turner Sports and the NCAA. Is this an effort subtly maybe of convincing CBS Sports Network to broadcast this game once again live in a championship, on television? Or is this because CBS happens to be in town for these games and they'd be remiss not to do these? Of course, in the backyard, by the way, I should say, of Turner.
Well, I think again, remembering that Turner and CBS are joined at the hip with the whole men's Division I tournament and some of our other championships, I do think that the fact that the production folks are already in Atlanta obviously gives us an opportunity that we might not have otherwise. But certainly, we continue to promote the availability, the willingness, our willingness to help see additional championships broadcast live, whether it be on the CBS Sports cable channel or another venue. So we're definitely excited about the commitment, the plans to broadcast the D3 contest on that channel. I think that's a very positive development. The Final Four is the biggest stage that we have in terms of championships in the NCAA, and this opportunity to have Division III student athletes spend some time in the spotlight on that stage, it's just a fabulous opportunity for our student athletes and to help to promote what Division III is all about.
Is there any thought of doing this in the future and continue with it, or is this a one-and-done type deal?
Well, the commitment right now is only to, in conjunction with the 75th anniversary. I think it's probably fair to say that, as with all of our activities, whether it be on the championships front or in the operations front, there's a commitment long-term to sort of reviewing where we're at and trying to identify business opportunities that make sense moving forward. There are no specific plans at this point as it relates to basketball beyond this one-time opportunity.
And finally, if fans want to start making their plans now, buying their tickets, getting their hotel rooms, maybe even booking their flights, is that available to do yet? Is there a place to go to get that information?
Not. I don't know if in fact that particular opportunity is available at that point. I don't think it is, but I'm sure that will be made available fairly soon once some of the related details are resolved.
Very good. Talking to Dan Dutcher, Vice President of Division III, you were saying?
I was going to say, remember that all of the championships information, the best place to go is ncaa.com.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I appreciate Dan coming on here to talk about something that he and I have actually been chatting about for a long time, it feels like, for a while, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us. As always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those out there who are learning more from you about this championship weekend?
Well, I think I'm excited about the opportunity. I think folks will be pleasantly surprised regarding our ability to participate in this weekend and help to better tell the great story that is Division III athletics.
Very good. Dan Dutcher, Vice President, Division III for the NCAA. Thanks so much for joining me here on this special Hoopsville, and have a good rest of your summer. I'm sure we'll be chatting quite a bit as we get closer to the next academic year.
Thanks again, Dave. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again to Dan Dutcher, Vice President for Division III for the NCAA. Something I should keep you in mind of, he alluded to the basketball committee and leaning on them for scheduling. Just a timeline factor for you, the Division III basketball committee, and along with a number of other committees from around Division III, gather and get together in June. They will discuss a number of things, including the 2012, 11 and 12 season. They will also discuss any changes they want to make to systems. They will put in place a new committee chair. They will bring in new committee members. I believe off the top of my head, they are losing 4 of the 8 that were on last year's committee. And so all of that takes place normally. And obviously this has already been a topic of conversation for the committee, but they can't make any major changes until they have their new committee members in place, since it does affect the 2012-2013 season. When the new committee chair is in place and the new committee is in place, they will certainly make decisions forward. Just from my own personal chats and stuff, I believe that decision may happen rather quickly. It seems like they've got a good plan in place, but it just has not yet gone through the appropriate channels and been approved yet. When they do get a new committee member in place, we will try and have a separate interview with him coming up here on another Hoopsville podcast. Again, that is coming up in about a month's time in June. In the meantime, again, thanks to Dan Dutcher from Division III, Vice President of Division III, for joining me here on Hoopsville. Hope we answered many of your questions. If we did not, let us know. You can always email us at hoopsville@d3hoops.com. That's hoopsville@d3hoops.com. You can follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter account is twitter.com/D3Hoopsville, or join us on Facebook as well. Just look up Hoopsville. You should find us there. Many ways to contact us, and we hope you'll take advantage of those, and we're happy to answer your questions. And if we don't have the answer for you, we will try and chase down people who may just have those. Thanks again to listening to this special Hoopsville broadcast here in the middle of May, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, and stay tuned for more Hoopsville podcasts throughout the off season as we cover news that takes place here in Division III basketball.